The You Can Say That Here podcast would like to thank our sponsor, Employment Tutors. Employment Tutors is your go-to destination when you want to get promoted, become a better leader, or set yourself up for success after college. You can visit employmenttutors.com or receive free access to a live small group coaching session by emailing coach@employmenttutors.com and putting "You Can Say That Here" in the subject line. You can say that here.
Welcome to You Can Say That Here. I'm Allison Demers. With me, I have Colleen Ferrari and Andrew Levesque. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome, welcome. So good to see you, Allie.
Lots of stuff happening, guys.
Okay, we would just be wrong to not just glom on to everybody else and talk about this morning or last night, I guess, Will Smith stepped down from the Academy. And I mean, people cannot stop talking about this incident. So go, what's your take?
I want to hear from the both of you first because, you know what, I am a Libra and I know some people don't believe in astrological things and I kind of don't, but I am a typical Libra with the scales. So I can always see both sides. I want to hear from you guys first and then maybe come up with my own decision.
Yeah, so I spend a lot of time on Twitter, as you guys know, and I almost never post anything, but I read a lot. And so this is the town square, right? So I'm trying to pay attention to everything that's going on. And there was 3 solid days of Will Smith chatter going on. So this is a fascinating topic, and it's a great example for how we should talk about things, right? Because there's clearly a lot going on. And even though it's a simple thing that happened, like we have to decide first, what do we all agree? What did we see happen? Right.
Mm-hmm.
I love, Andy, that you are the voice of let's agree first. Okay, we agree that this hothead stormed on stage, slapped Chris Rock, and it was inappropriate. True?
What did you call him?
A hothead.
Okay.
There are so many judgments in what you just said, Colleen.
You totally know.
Well, we're supposed to be demonstrating discipline here and good conversation, right? What I saw, I will be the role model. What I saw was
I saw Andy Levesque for the first time ever.
I know, right? Oh my God, you're right. We can all grow, right, Allie?
Yes.
What I saw was a comedian on stage doing his job, the thing he was getting paid to do. He made a comment that allegedly was the reason that another person got up from the audience, walked up on stage, and slapped the comedian. So Will Smith went up on stage, slapped Chris Rock after he made a comment about Will Smith's wife, right? Made a joke.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the background that we probably can also agree on is that Chris Rock is there hosting the show, right? We agree on that. His job, part of his job is to kind of tease people and make fun of them because that's what they always do. It's amusing. We can agree that Will Smith was sitting right up in the front. We can agree that his wife was bald, and we can agree that there was a slap. So what else? I don't necessarily agree that a hothead went up on stage. Let's put it this way. I don't automatically agree that a hothead went up on stage and did something inappropriate.
Or do you think that what happened was appropriate? Does anyone here think that what happened is appropriate?
May I just wonder if words were exchanged before the Academy Awards and maybe Will said to Chris on the side, hey man, don't come for my wife. And Chris purposely did. That may warrant a slap.
So you're saying it's okay to be violent.
And I'm not. That's where I'm torn because it's not okay to put your hands on anyone at any time, but a slap in comparison, again, not the same. A push, a shove, a slap, all not okay. But there's something inside of me that says he went after his wife. he deserved to get a slap. But I know that's my flesh speaking. My God side would say, turn the other cheek, forgive, say your piece if you need to, let God deal with it. So that's why I say to you both, I can see both sides. I can see men saying, if that were my wife, I clock him. And then I see the other side where this is a Black man who's a role model, with this time in the world, the last thing he wants to do is look violent. You know what I mean? There's so many sides.
So when I first saw the video, my husband and daughter were watching this video and I thought he punched him. It looked like he punched him. And my husband turned to me and he said, no, Colleen, it was worse. He slapped him. And I'm like, worse? And so I had to go confirm with Andy. And Andy's like, oh, that's right. Slapping is far worse than punching. But Andy, I want to call out what you said the other day on the phone, because you were talking about, like, I think Allie just kind of stepped right into it about, are words as bad as punching or physical contact?
No, I don't believe they are, but we need to take a big step back before we get into this, because we're still trying to agree on what we saw. What we saw might well have been part of the show. You have to accept that that's a possibility, that this was all part of the show. This was
all
by
staged.
design.
I don't think it's part of the show, because Will Smith stepping down from the Academy for life, that to me indicates that this was not part of the show. Although, and I think the other piece of it is it was so big that the fallout of this is it's not about this situation, but I feel so bad. I don't think the Oscars or the Academy would do this to all those other people who won statues, who deserve that little moment. I mean, everyone would know that it would take away from everyone else who won an Oscar that night.
But could it be for the greater good? I'm sorry, Ellie, go ahead.
No, go ahead. That's my question.
I mean, could it be for the greater good of the organism, right? The organism is the Academy, and the awards show is always that's their centerpiece. That's the thing that their whole world revolves around, is winning an Oscar, right? Because that sets you up for life. It's the sort of circle jerk of prizes that they give themselves. They, first of all, they limit who can win, and then they decide who wins, and then they popularize who wins. And it's this old boy crony network of people. And every once in a while they let an outsider in to sort of freshen up the gene pool. But one of the bits of evidence I'm not saying, I don't know what I believe. I think it probably wasn't fake, because like you, Colleen, I think there would be a lot of risk involved in doing something like that. What I do know is
with a Black man, I think if it was staged, because I think there's a big conversation going on right here now, like, he represents a piece of our community that we want to elevate and make sure is at the kind of on even footing with everyone else. I don't think if it was staged, they would have particularly chosen a man of color to go and do that.
I think if Leonardo DiCaprio had gone up there and slapped Chris Rock, Leonardo DiCaprio would be hit with a $200 million lawsuit, and he'd be in jail right now. So I think that.
Ooh, those are kind of interesting words right there.
I do think that race is a factor if it's staged. If not, it's just two guys, right? It's just two guys, and they both happen to be Black, and it's not the important part of the story. But in the current culture, right, if it was a white on Black crime, it would have immediately been about race.
Mm-hmm.
It could be.
It would have, and if it was a white actor being slapped by Will Smith or Chris Rock or whoever, it would have immediately been about race.
Mm-hmm.
So the interesting thing is the discussion has, although some people can do the mental gymnastics to make this about race, I'm not one of those people that gives much attention to that argument that this is just a manifestation of white supremacy. Will Smith slapping Chris Rock because he's frustrated by white supremacy. Okay, fine. Not interested in that conversation. It's on Twitter, just so you know. Twitter's great. You should go there. It'll ruin your mind. But if it, so the fact that there was just two people that matched that, had this altercation sort of takes race out of it. So the interesting thing is, what, going back to what you said before, is Chris Rock said something. He said words, and Will Smith responded with violence. That, to me, is where it falls apart. Words are not violence, but there's a common misconception in today's culture, and I sound like an old man, but there's all these efforts being made to get there where words are violence. It's okay. Hey, go punch a Nazi, right?
Tiffany Haddish, I found, had the most interesting response to this. Tiffany Haddish is somebody who is on stage making fun of people, and probably not the cleanest comic ever. However, but this is her job as a comedian. And she goes out there and her first statement is, I'm so glad chivalry isn't dead. Well, what kind of, first of all, you're a role model. You're somebody who's on stage. Would it have been okay for him to come up and slap you, or a woman to come up and slap you? But chivalry isn't dead. Chivalry is not setting a bad example in front of the world. It is not making physical contact with somebody. It is, maybe you stand up for your wife, but it is chivalry. What kind of family do you grow up in that you think it's okay? Chivalry means slapping some other person or making physical. It's violence. That is violence. I don't care if it's a slap. I don't care if it didn't knock him off his feet. It's still violence.
I think you're right, Colleen. Like I said earlier, whether it's a push or a shove or a slap. And again, I didn't understand how demeaning a slap would be to a man. I think that's what you guys were getting at earlier. It's worse to slap a man than to punch a man. We grew up where men get mad at each other, they punch each other, it's over with. Women, we have words that may go on for another year, So I think in her case, Tiffany Haddish, or Haddish, however you pronounce her name, she was saying, this man stuck up for his wife. And maybe in her culture, they don't see that often enough. And like I said, when I was growing up, I'll tell you right now, my dad would have punched the guy in the face. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. The evolved man today, perhaps like Andy, may have waited till the show was over, had words, and said, don't ever speak to my wife again like that. I don't know. But it's interesting, like what you're saying, there are two sides, and people are overlooking the violence to say, yeah, that was his wife. He had every right to crack him.
He didn't, though. So
no, he didn't.
Let's throw away the idea. The only reason I brought up the idea that it could have been staged is because you don't know. So you have to take that into consideration. But the more interesting conversation happens if it wasn't staged, if it was a spontaneous event that we all witnessed, right? I believe it is not.
Spontaneous is funny to me because that man had an awful lot of time between the time he stood up from his seat and walked all the way up on stage. That is not spontaneous. He had too much time to walk up there and think about it.
Look, it's taken us 10 minutes to even start talking about it. He didn't have time to think about it. I'll give him credit for that. If it was spontaneous, if it was like he lost it, he snapped and he had to go do something. This stuff, if this happened at an after party, if this happened at a before party, if this happened at a bar between two normal people, it's not even talked about because it's normal in that scenario. The oddness of the scenario where you're part of the spectacle is the guy up on stage is a jester and he is there to make fun of you, because the impression is 364 days a year, you take yourself so goddamn seriously and you live in this insulated world where everybody just tells you everything is great and everything you want to hear and everything is perfect. And these folks have had their problems, right?
Well, that's the elephant in the room. Was he making a statement? Was he sick of hearing about Jada? I'm sick of hearing about Jada, I gotta tell you.
Well, Ricky Gervais had the best comment, of course. Like Ricky Gervais, you may or may not know, when he hosted the Golden Globes a couple of times, he was absolutely just eviscerating people left and right. He's one of the funniest people that I can think of. And he was so brutal. He had the best comment. He goes, I would absolutely not have made fun of Jada's hair. I would have made fun of her boyfriend.
Hey, know what? I think there's some interesting. Like, I was watching this whole thing unfold over the last week. And I'm like, man, that family needs God. Because as I was watching this, I watched him make this decision to go up there and slap her. First, he laughed at the joke. Then he noticed his wife was upset, and then he, that took it to a different place. But then they showed video as he's up there slapping it. She's in her chair laughing, which, like, she, to me, is just as guilty as he is for inappropriate conduct, and kick her out. And then their son the next day posts, this is how we do it. I'm like,
that was his son. That was what's his name? The kid there.
Jaden.
Right? Jaden.
Yeah, he posted this. He posted, like, he tweeted that out 30 seconds after it happened.
Interesting. So you have this piece. Now, here is this family who has made millions putting themselves in the public eye. So I'm sorry that if you've decided that this is how you're going to make your millions, then you also need to expect that whether Chris Rock's choice of jokes was inappropriate or not, you also better live like you are being paid to live in the public eye. Like, like,
it's part of the spectacle. It's expected that you're going to get made fun of. You sit in the front row at we've all been to comedy shows. You sit in the front row, you're getting picked on. It doesn't allow you to go up on stage and strike the comedian because he says something you don't like.
Well, my point is, through this whole episode, we have Jada laughing. We have the son posting, just this is how we do it, inappropriate comments. There's some moral dysfunction here. I was watching their, he said something really interesting, and I get how this could push somebody to their limit.
Yes.
When he was on stage, he said something to the effect of, I'm always defending my marriage. And man, they've had a long ride. So I'm like, okay, let me go listen to this. Jada has this show. I'm full disclosure, because I may come out as biased. Like, I'm not a big Jada Pinkett fan at all. I've always been a huge Will Smith fan, never a Jada Pinkett fan. And so she kind of, here's this moral forum that we're in. And so I kind of struggle from a moral perspective about who she is as a human being anyway. But she has this Red Table Talk show on Facebook or whatever. And so I'm like, okay, let me hear what have they been going through? So the two of them decide to be guests on her own show and talk about the infidelity in their marriage. And so, it starts off like the Ross and Rachel thing. We were on a break, right? And I was like, all right, they were on a break. I've heard so many different iterations of what their marriage is and the challenges. But at the end of the day, they did the friends thing. We were on a break, But then I thought what was really interesting, and obviously that was staged and rehearsed, and PR was so involved. I'm sure they were surrounded and by all of these people during that filming. But Will Smith said he called her having an affair a transgression, and she said it wasn't a transgression. It was like, it was a transgression. And to me, that says, you know what? Everything that they're saying, they're just trying to smooth over ugly. And I know there's bad love out there. I know that relationships and marriages are really, really hard.
How impossible must it be to have a relationship, like have a real relationship, and be true to yourself and be true in that relationship when your whole world involves you being fake?
And under a microscope.
You have to meet other people's expectations for your behavior. There's some people that seem to figure this out and do it, and they usually last a long time in Hollywood, and they're famous forever. And there's some that just stay the hell out of the public eye, right? There's some people that you can't track them. They come in, they do their work, and then they disappear.
Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward, one of the most beautiful love stories ever. But I remember he was on the radio during an interview for something, and somebody said, what's the secret to a long marriage? And he said, it's like a toaster. If our toaster breaks, we still fix it. So our marriage, we work on it, we fix it. And to your point, they didn't live very big in the public eye either.
No, he had his other hobbies and shit that he did that was cool. I mean, he was the real deal. He was a Renaissance man.
So let me throw this out to you, because when I was writing the decision, I went to all of these forums and I talked to all of these men and women who their spouses had cheated on them. And I think it's pretty fair to say that Jada cheated on Will, right? Like, just him calling it a transgression, I think says it all.
I think he thinks she cheated on him.
Yes, and
That's
and I
from
think
him saying, yeah.
there is the root. And so for a couple of years, he has been like asked about it. He's been defending his marriage. But what was interesting is that I went into these forums with people who their spouses had cheated. And there was, I mean, I was that person. Hey, if your spouse cheats, I have an extra room. Leave him. Once a cheat, always a cheat. He's going to do it again. Show up. I got you covered. Like, I was that friend. Very judgmental. Here we are. Here it goes. And then, but then you start learning. Everybody's got their own story and their own situation. There are people that stay and they have these beautiful, wonderful, happy marriages after. And so it's not my role to judge what's happening. But there is one common thing with all of these people that I interviewed and talked with. And thinking of Will Smith right now. I said Will, like we're on a first name basis.
Oh, I thought you were. It seemed like you were.
But here's the one thing with every single one of these transgressions, the person on the other side is always struggling years later, even if they've forgiven their spouse, something is broken inside of them that says, I wasn't enough. I wasn't good enough. There was something missing. It doesn't matter. Even if they married an asshole, they all, men and women that I spoke to, were all struggling with the same thing. And as I was writing that book, I was blown away by, man, I have been passing judgment because I thought I was helpful. This was a very easy decision for me to make for other people. But once you are in that, you're realizing how broken and the emotion and the other reasons that help you work on that relationship and try to bring it together. I just look at Will Smith in that situation and I do kind of feel bad for him a little, because to me, him saying that about his marriage, and I'm always defending my marriage, kind of said, man, this is this guy who's been at a tipping point for a few years. And this had nothing to do about what came out of Chris Rock's mouth.
No, he snapped. So he's had all this pressure, all this stress, all this ugliness that he's had to deal with, and he still wants to stay with his wife. We don't know why. Can't read the man's mind, but it's pretty obvious that we're assuming that it was a spontaneous event, that he didn't go in there saying, if this motherfucker makes one crack about my wife, I'm going to get up there and slap him. Assuming he didn't think that through ahead of time, right? You got to think about all these things. If it was just this random act that we saw and he lost it for a minute and he did this, then yeah, I mean, he ruined what should have been the best night of his life. And he ruined the night for a lot of other people. And the Academy didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to do. They should have removed him, in my opinion. Yes. They should have just removed him right away, given him his damn Oscar, because that's a whole other thing we could talk about, retrospective bigoteering. They should have given him his Oscar later on, like, okay, and the award for Best Actor would have gone to Will Smith. Will Smith unfortunately can't be here to accept this award. Ha, ha, ha. We'll talk to him later. And then they could have moved on with the show and it would have been better. Instead, they created this incredibly tense, toxic environment. And he's going to be, if he thinks he was being judged before, can you imagine what he's going through right now?
I just want to go back just for a moment about adultery with Colleen and how you said so many people, they stay in it, but yet they still feel broken. Why wasn't I good enough? Why wasn't I enough? And the truth is, for anybody listening, it never has to do with the spouse who's been cheated on. The person who cheats, it has everything to do with them. And the butterflies maybe that the person gave them that they cheated with. I don't know if I'm saying this clearly. The truth is, it's their issue. It's their problem. Again, these people carry all of the shame and hurt and brokenness. But once you get to the point where I did nothing to make this person cheat on me, it has nothing to do with me and everything to do with them, that's when healing can begin. And still, you may think you're healing and that occasional trigger may come, but I just need people to know that, yeah, you can get over an infidelity, and sometimes you can't. But at the end of the day, it has nothing. Halle Berry was cheated on how many times? She's the most beautiful woman in the world. Had nothing to do with whether she was beautiful enough or not. And in fact, studies have shown that for people who do cheat, they cheat with people who aren't as attractive as their spouses necessarily, or aren't even as good-hearted. It just had to do with how that person made them feel, those butterflies, like I alluded to before. So anybody who's ever experienced anything like that, still not a reason to jump up on stage and crack, Chris Rock, because you've been aggravated in your marriage for quite some time. For whatever reason, Will Smith did it. I think we can all agree violence is never acceptable.
Oh, I disagree with that, Allie.
Oh, really?
I agree with everything you said right up until you said violence is never acceptable.
Unless you're protecting yourself. If
Yeah,
somebody's going to hit me, I'm going to hit back. Clearly.
If someone's going to hit me, I might hit them first.
So speaking of violence, I just have to put a little plug in for our podcast. You can say that here. I'm pretty confident the Pope is listening to us. Heard the Ukraine bit, had a mass for Ukraine, and now is on his way to Kyiv. Yes, we roll, right? He heard us.
Well,
so he is
God
excited to speak in Kyiv, and I'm so thankful. There's this compassionate Pope who is saying, I need to be a part. Gone is the separation of church and state. Here's an influential leader who's going to try to make a difference, and I'm so thankful for him.
To the Pope copter.
I'm sure it's because he listened to our podcast. So you guys should all subscribe right now so you don't miss out. Who knows what other influence we're going to have on the world?
Ellie don't cotton with no papists, Colleen.
So
I will say when I was researching, I went to my priest and I said, here's the situation. And he said, I always ask young couples when they're doing their pre-class, I always forget the name of that thing. And he said, pre-Canaan. And he said, what does for better or for worse mean to you? And he said, well, isn't infidelity some of the worst? And so when you marry someone, it's for better or for worse. And so we ask God to forgive us. Shouldn't we forgive as well? So it was kind of this interesting, unless there's a real parting that you don't want to be with each other, you want to do an annulment. His stance is if your spouse wants to be forgiven, you should forgive.
If you can forgive, because we can't forgive in our own strength. As Christians, we're like, we can't do anything on our own strength. It's only with Christ. With Christ, I can do all things. All things are possible. So forgiving something like an infidelity, a death, we can't do it in our own strength. We can only do it with God. So, and adultery is one of the sins we believe that the marriage is over. That's it.
Right.
So it's really
Jesus said that, right?
Yes.
Is infidelity, then
infidelity and abuse ends marriage. That's it. So with prayer, if you come to the conclusion that I'd like to continue this marriage and stay with this person, you're going to need Jesus, and you're going to need reassurance from your spouse often, even maybe 10 years going in, that you can trust them. And that's a very difficult walk to walk. But yes, it can be done. Just wanted to clarify, you don't need to stay in your marriage because of an infidelity. If you can't do it, you can't do it. But if you can, all the more power to. God bless you. Not an easy thing.
Well, what the hell is marriage anyway? I mean, what if we figured out that our evolved state is not necessarily monogamy?
I don't know. What is the mate for life? Is it a whale that mates for life?
A lot of species do.
Oh, lots. Geese,
I think,
otters.
I think you guys have known me. I thought I'd never get married. I did things so backwards. I'm like, I am never ever getting married. I'm a single woman. Here I am. before?
Well, I had a theory about that. I've known you for a long time. I had a theory about that.
All right.
I thought you were never going to get married because the wedding could never possibly meet your expectations. You had this idea, and this I could be completely wrong. I'm just sharing with you what my deepest thoughts about you were, and I want you to know that I was thinking about you, and it was from a place of caring. It was not meant in any kind of a snarky way. I sound sarcastic when I talk. I can't help it. But I thought, your expectations for yourself are so incredibly off the charts high that how could you possibly put on a pageant that would meet those expectations? I also know that you're somebody who, one of the first times we ever hung out, I was like, we were going to go eat and I was trying to impress her. So I don't know what the hell I did, but she was like, oh, I thought we were going to get a ham grinder. And that's who Colleen is, right? It's the crazy dichotomy of, I'm happy if someone gets me a ham grinder, but I'm also my expectations for myself are so lofty that a wedding would just be an impossible task.
I never, well, Allie knows, like, I didn't even want to have a wedding. I mean, here's a man that like kind of he so surprised me. He came into my life, like, both my parents were dying. Like, I found out a week apart that they both had terminal cancer. And and my girlfriends kind of like created this crazy situation as to how I met him. I don't even know how he came into my life, but here's a man who cures cancer for a living. And I'm like, wow, I've got to talk to him. No even intention to ever, I wasn't even when we were talking every single night for months, I was like, well, I'm not going to want to date with him. Like, I'm not really, and it's not because I don't love sex, but it's because I was so happy. I had a child. I was like, I was in this place, my business, my family, all this stuff. Like, it took priority for it over it. But I've never ever been like that big wedding person. I wanted to elope, and if it wasn't for a couple friends of mine saying, "Listen, we heard that you want to elope, and we're going to chase you down, and we're going to be there whether you like it or not." Like, I had a very, very, very small wedding, and it wasn't. It was like no stress, no Spanx, no hair dry. It was like, oh yeah, I guess I should get a little cake. Oh, like, I showed up at the day I was getting married with 2 dresses. I'm like, oh, which one I'll wear today? It wasn't even like that. That it's so funny that's why you thought I didn't get married. I think I didn't get married, honestly, because I grew up with these 3 fucking amazing women who were all divorced and all achieving amazing things in life. And when I looked at marriage, I was like, oh, that's messy and a headache and complicated. And I'm like, look how happy we all are with that then. And I was like, why would I complicate things?
Andy, you sound like you were explaining me, actually, and not Colleen. If you think about it, I was married at 23. Go ahead.
The only difference between you two I've been able to figure out is, Colleen thinks that saints intervene with God and you don't. That's another thing I fix. So far, you're both exactly the same. Well, you went to the same high school. It's time we celebrate our similarities as well as our differences, right? We do have some differing views, but no, Colleen, I want to clear up 2 things because I was talking fast and thinking fast, but I want to clear up 2 things. Number one, I never thought you wouldn't get married. I never thought you were going to have a big wedding.
She didn't.
And she didn't. I figured you would elope or you'd chicken out and, just do it in some small way that was very unobtrusive and completely, I don't want to be a bother,
But she looked like a Hollywood starlet. You really did.
Of course.
Yeah.
And but the other thing I want to clear up, when I met Colleen, I was 18 years old. And of course, here's this beautiful girl. And I think there was probably 5 boys.
Do not tell.
No. There was no. You wait. See, let me speak.
Oh my God.
There was probably 5 of us that were hanging out in a group of boys. As boys do when they're 18. And here's this beautiful girl. Of course, we're all like, "Wow, who's she gonna date? Which one?" And so she friend zoned my ass immediately. immediately I was placed in the friend zone. And, I'm so happy that that's what happened,
Mm,
because here we are 30 years later and we're
mm,
still friends, and it worked out. Sometimes it works
yes.
out.
I think what's
Yes.
cool about both of you is there's so many things that we disagree on, but there's so many ways that we're so alike. There's
Mm,
we have, over the years, I mean, I just think about how many times we've had these conversations that we have like kind of worked through our disagreements and said, man, but we can come together on what we agree with.
mm.
And sometimes, as I'm sure this yoga conversation is going to go next, I think there's some things that we just have to say, I agree to disagree.
Yeah.
The friendship's more valuable.
Never.
All right, whatever. Moving on. Are you guys done with? Okay, I just have one comment. Will Smith said something about marriage when we were talking about marriage, and he goes, I thought this was great. He goes, "It ain't for the weak of heart." I'm like, all right, I'll quote him on that. That was a good quote.
Yes.
Okay, I do want to shift a little to this yoga conversation that we've been teaching people with, because you caught me off guard last week when you're like, oh, you can't do yoga, Colleen. You worship, I do it every Monday. I'm like, what? Worshiping false gods? So you have to explain this whole yoga thing.
I have a lot of yogi friends who I love very much and I respect them. And I believe in yoga that it strengthens the body, the muscles, but it was originally created, correct me if I'm wrong, you two smart people, as a Hindu practice to become in a greater relationship with the Hindu gods. And so all of those poses are actually worshiping poses to once again come into the essence of the Hindu gods. So,
Body, mind, spirit, baby.
and I agree with body, mind, spirit. And I think every good doctor would tell you that all three need to do well together. If one is out of whack, the others will be. And I do believe in energy medicine like Reiki. And I'm just cautious about this particular practice
Why do we kneel in church, Allie?
to show reverence to God.
Well, maybe that's what they're doing. They're doing
Actually,
these
but it's
hard ass poses to try to show God, hey, look how strong I am in your basking in your glory. I have no idea, by the way. I
no,
know
no,
nothing.
you're right. And you're
I
right.
can't
Because
even touch my toes. I do not fucking know anything about yoga, but I'm just wondering, like, how different is it from kneeling in church? Like, why do we
so
take these different postures?
Well, I think that's a problem, right? Because you're doing these postures originally to worship other gods, right?
that's what yoga was created for. It's really Hinduism. However, if I could use this analogy, you know, as a Catholic, the Catholic Church doesn't really like Halloween. They consider it to be a pagan holiday. So they say, if you're going to dress up, don't dress up as anything scary. If you're going to go out and get candy, don't call it Halloween,
Oh,
because
for
they can,
Christ's
again,
sake.
okay. So, and many Christians too, they feel like it's Satan's holiday. If you are a real witch, let's say, or a
Satanists feel that
Satanist.
way too, Ellie. Satanists also believe it's their holiday, so they agree on that. See, even
So,
Satanists and Catholics can agree on something.
so my point is this: if, let's say I believe that Halloween is evil and it's Satan's holiday, I could still allow my children to participate, but maybe not dress up as Satan. Okay, they're just going out, not calling it Halloween, just enjoying themselves, getting candy, coming home, having a good time. Somebody who wants to stretch to yoga, as they do those poses, they're not saying to themselves, I'm worshiping a Hindu god and I want to be a Hindu and I want to come into the essence of a Hindu god. They're just saying, I just want to stretch. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? It's what we do with it and what we make of it. It's all perception.
Oh, well, this was like very anticlimactic because I know where it's like as it started. I was like, yeah, it was interesting because when you said that, I was like, what does she mean worshiping false gods? She won't do that because when I'm namasteing, baby, I'm like celebrating
Look
the
up.
fact that I'm going to open and take some time with God, which is ironic. And I was like, I think it's about this moment where you're just kind of in your own space, in your own head, kind of taking care of you, but feeling and hearing what's around you and inside of you, right? And so for me, it's always been this this moment to just get stronger, get open, and be closer to God. And now it sounds like we agree. It's how whatever you see that you're doing.
No, actually, I hear you.
Okay.
When you are doing those poses, are you focused on Jesus, focused on God, or like, because the practice of yoga, correct me if I'm wrong, is I have the strength inside of me to do this, not Jesus Christ, God, whatever. It's all about you. Isn't that part of it?
Maybe
There is,
it's
yes, there is part of. You're right. But yeah.
maybe it's just so that you get more invitations to orgies.
You're so crazy. If you're that flexible, God bless you. You know, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But if you look at the origin of it and even what namaste means, all of these, you know, it depends how you do it and what's in your mind at the time. And are you giving the glory to God? Are you taking the glory? Do you know what I'm saying?
Well,
It's all about
No.
Namaste means hello. That's what namaste means. So a lot of yogis have.
I thought it was like aloha. I thought it means like everything.
It's bend and greeting. So the Hindus maybe were bending and greeting to their God, but namaste, the interpretation, the definition of namaste is essentially hello.
so they have Christian yoga instead of the Hindu yoga.
Just mostly like arms spread out, feet together.
Oh,
I am afraid to even laugh.
Andy's crucifixion on video. That's why they should see.
I know. I'm afraid to get struck by lightning if I laugh at you, Andy. But that's my take on yoga. I think that, like anything else, what is your goal here? Is your goal to worship Hindu gods? Is it to just stretch out? But then other Christians would say, doesn't matter. It's like witchcraft. You're doing the poses. You're engaged and you don't even know it and you're deceived. So again, I can always see both sides. For me, I wouldn't do it.
But you guys know that my mind never, ever, ever stops. So for me,
No.
that is like, it's that moment to just be and just focus on me and my body, my spirituality. And it is very spiritual, but I've always, for me, it always connects to God. But I think you said something interesting, because I did read about that it's about a lot of practices, and a lot of people talk about it's about celebrating you and your internal power, and that may conflict with you being a vessel of God or his child, and not honoring him in some way.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot more. I mean, you could look up a list of it. There could be like 20 things on there, why you shouldn't do this pose, why you shouldn't do that pose, what they say to you as they're teaching the classes. Again, for me, I think it's all about, where is your heart? Are you saying I'm worshiping a Hindu god by doing these practices? Or are you saying, I just want to stretch out, and it's a good stretch?
Come on. I got to stop you. This is fucking ridiculous. Are you really willing to submit to this level of control and mind fuckery? Like, you're not allowed to do yoga because it's offensive to Jesus. Shut up, motherfucker.
Wow, Andy.
I'm sorry.
Wow.
That pisses. I'll bleep that out, but that pisses me off.
No,
It's like,
leave it.
Listen to you. You're like, oh, do I need to do this? Because who's telling you this? Where does it say in the Bible you can't do freaking yoga?
No, it's no other gods before me.
You're not putting anybody before God. You just said you're thinking about Jesus the whole time.
If I am, there's so many people who are out there doing it who have no idea that they're dabbling in something that may not be good for them. If they have no
idea, then they aren't doing it.
No, you still are, Andy.
That's stupid, Allie. That's stupid. That is a stupid idea. I have never said anything like that on this podcast before.
Okay.
That is a dumb idea.
Okay.
Does a child know when they're hurting your feelings when they say, "Oh, mommy, you look fat in that shirt"? Like, is the kid doing it to be mean? No. So if you're praying to a false god by accident, do you think Jesus is going to smite you?
No.
I also want to go on record with something else. Okay. Allie, I want you to know, if you laugh at something irreverent that I say and you get struck by lightning, while we're sitting here, I want you to know your death will not be in vain because I will convert on the spot.
Oh my gosh. No, you know what, Andy, you're right. How could God hold us accountable for something when we don't know better?
No idea.
I agree with you. I agree with you. What I'm trying to say is
it takes a real special breed of fuckwit to be like, oh, you can't do that. Oh, don't do praying frog because that's the way Satan gets in. Satan's gonna get you.
No. See, but that's where we differ, because I do believe, like, when you do tarot cards, fortune telling, even though you may not know, and God's not going to hold you accountable, like you said, because you don't know, that doesn't mean the occult can't come in. Everything is spiritual for me, Andy. So that's why for you look at it logically, you're like, that's ridiculous. But no, there's a spiritual aspect to all of it.
But it's not even consistent with what I've heard you say. So thinking these things is not even consistent with what I've heard you say. Some human being is making this shit up and telling you can't do happy baby because you're in a vulnerable position and Satan's going to mount you. I mean,
oh my God,
give me a freaking break.
Did I? No, I don't. I didn't say
Can't
another.
Things just be fun? Can't things just?
Nothing was said about mounting.
Say that again, Colleen. You kind of cut out.
I just want to defend Allie. She said nothing about mounting. The devil's not mounting you there.
I'm just extrapolating out where the logical conclusion is of this pattern of thinking, like, can't do this, can't do that, don't do this, don't do that. It's all just control.
But it goes against the word of God. It goes against the word of God.
It doesn't.
It does.
Show me in the Bible where it says you can't do happy baby.
I just have to pull it up, okay? Just let me find it.
You'll find it.
I'll have that ready for next time, okay?
It's in the gospel according to some schmo that reads things a little too closely and makes shit up.
Again, when you do these poses, are you worshiping Jesus Christ, or are you engaging in Hinduism? That's what it comes down to.
Are you what if you are just completely about internalizing and celebrating you? Is that wrong?
No, not at all. I have read
that some Christians believe that if you are taking that practice to celebrate you, then you're putting yourself above God. And I
don't look at it like that. We have birthdays and we celebrate our birthdays. However, what I would say is, it's that you're right. If you come before God, if anything comes before God, it's a sin. It's no gods before him. So he's the true one. So whether it's you, Hindu God, that can become a problem. Or giving yourself the glory and not giving him the glory. That could be an issue as well.
I mean, speaking of semantics, no gods before me. I've never thought I was a god.
Right. Well, we kind of sometimes put even other people before him, our spouses, our children, ourselves, and that can be considered like a god.
Or it could be considered being a responsible adult.
That too. And I'm the person who always says, I use that analogy when you go on an airplane, when the oxygen falls, we put it on ourselves first, because how could we take care of anybody else if we don't take care of ourselves? Again, though, are we giving ourselves the glory? Or are we giving it to God? Who's the man here? Who's the woman here? It's not us, it's him. But self-care is everything. That's a totally different topic.
So now that we've heated up this podcast a little, do you want to talk about Don't Say Gay?
Yes.
Okay, so everybody probably knows at this point, anybody who's listening to us probably knows that Florida just passed the bill, right? The Don't Say Gay bill. And
did they pass it, or is it still being deliberated?
I believe it was passed.
I don't know. I think so.
Yeah,
yes, it did. Okay, I did pull up a little bit of an article from NBC, that non-propaganda news source. But I think they might have this. They might have this right. It does say the bill passed.
Did you pull up Did you pull up the happy baby pose and how it's satanic?
No, I'm going to though. But because it's not enough to actually do. We have a 10-year-old who does gymnastics, and so our household revolves around gymnastics quite a bit. And in my case, I can't even touch my toes, as I stated earlier. So It's all about mental gymnastics for me. So I need to figure out how to make this connection between
Okay.
yoga and letting Satan rule my life. I need to get there. I'll get there, Allie.
All
And
right,
and
I
I- and I'm,
got
and
you.
I'm as good as my word. I hope that this never happens. I wish you nothing but the best. But if you laugh at one of my jokes and you are struck down, God smites you. It will
No,
not be
he
for nothing.
won't.
You can in your last split second as you're being smited, you can you changed one person's life.
Oh my
You
gosh.
did a great thing.
He, that's one thing. He's not gonna hurt me to get to you. Let me tell you, he's not
God,
gonna.
not worth it.
Ellie,
Oh, yes, it is.
Not worth it. No,
Yes,
it's
it
not.
is.
It's not worth it.
It is. You're worth it.
It's
You're worth it.
I wouldn't trade you for me. It's not fair. You get yours, I get mine. Yeah, it
Okay, Kyle,
passed.
I'm all yours. Go ahead.
no,
The gay bill.
so the bill basically says that you can't talk about sexuality or teach sexuality to any child from kindergarten to third grade. So there is this piece of me as a parent that I understand this bill. I don't want them talking about sexuality. I want them to learn everything that they know about sexuality, whether if it's a, transgender or regular, whatever relationship that you decide to share with your children. I want to do that. Like third grade, they should be learning about reading and writing and not talking about sex. And I think they start talking about sex in fourth and fifth grade, right, with children. So to me, it seems like why would teachers be injecting themselves in this conversation anyway? But there has certainly been an uproar from the communities and especially young, like the Zoomers that are saying, hey, you know what, this is not right. This is kind of cutting off the conversation. This is about quieting the LGBTQ community. This is, what are we doing here? Why are we imposing this law? If a child goes to a teacher and asks that question before third grade, we want the teacher to be able to give them it's kind of a textbook answer. I don't think we want them to give their opinion, but we also want them to be able to address it with the student. And the bill kind of says, hey, no way, don't say gay. But although those
It
words
doesn't. The bill doesn't say don't say gay specifically.
right.
But there's, yeah, it's complex because I think the bill is an attempt at answering a growing concern among parents in Florida that the governor is, I think, reacting to. Now, he may be a little ham-fisted in this reaction because one of the things that's going to result from this is, and I always push back on your this idea of the LGBTQ community, Colleen. I don't believe such a thing exists. I think there's LGBTQ people, and then there are activists, and activists are at this point. I mean, when was the last time you heard about gay rights? Right, gays fought hard. They were persecuted. They weren't given the same rights to marry or to do other things, and it's kind of like it's a political movement. It's not a sexuality even. So when Pink magazine, I think it is, or it's one of the top gay journals, comes out and says Peter Thiel's not gay. Right? Peter Thiel's a billionaire. He happens to be gay. Well, he has sex with men. They say Peter Thiel might have sex with men, but he is not gay because he voted for Trump. So there's politically gay and then there's sexually gay, right? Those are two different things. It's the same way Joe Biden says, if you don't know whether you should vote for me or Trump, then you ain't black. It's not about your melanin content. It's a political movement. You look like you want to say something.
It's interesting, like who cares if Peter Thiel is gay or not? Like, and I think I have there's this philosophy, Jodie Foster, remember they said, hey, when are you going to come out? And she said, what do you mean? Like, why should I have to come out? And I'm like, I agree with her on that. Like, I know that there's a population of bigotry and supremacists and they're not accepting. And I believe that as fast as we become woke, that group is also diminishing. But I mean, like, I believe that the color of your skin, the who you love, this is all stuff that has no relevance to whether I love you or not. Or
You're
that
classically, that's because you're classically liberal. You're not following along with the postmodern ideology. So you and I and Allison too, I think, are all we're fairly based on our classic liberalism, in that we believe what Dr. King said, judge me by the content of my character, not the color of my skin.
exactly.
This is no longer an acceptable political belief for activists in certain spheres. So the people that are, I think that this bill is a reaction to activist teachers, and I'm trying to steelman their argument. I'm trying to make it like this is why they did this, and I may be giving them way too much credit. I don't know, but they're reacting to teachers and school administrators who are wanting to talk about transgenderism and gender dysphoria and sexuality, and maybe, hey, why do you want to talk about 6-year-old kids about, hey, you might be gay, or you might be trans, or you might be this, or you might be that? It seems age inappropriate, right?
There was some writing in that bill. As I was reading the bill, it was like the legalese in the bill just kind of was so distracting to me. But I think one of the things was that the parents can't talk to the parents. The teachers can't talk to the parents about. So if I thought, little Andrew was having some sexual misidentity issues or whatever, then it's not my business until, like, I can't intercede on his behalf with the parents either. I'm not sure if I misunderstood that piece of the bill, but I'd say, hey, if my child is going through this, I would hope my teacher would feel comfortable saying, hey, listen, I think little Andrew isn't really sure about his sexuality, and maybe you guys want to have a conversation about it. But let me give you some interesting statistics that I found, and statistics are just that, right? They can be made up. But I thought this was kind of interesting, that the number of people who identified in the LGBT as LGBT Americans has now risen to 21%, which is double what it was a few years ago. Of that, Generation Z has the largest number of people who recognize as LGBT community members. 57% of them are bisexual, which had put me in there too. I wouldn't mind doing a really pretty girl. But like I think there's this piece though that my daughter brought up from school, and she said, she was taking the sociology class, and she said, is it nature versus nurture, right? Like, as we become more acceptable, is this number rising because they are really truly freeing their soul? As like I think Allison has said, and I've said, like the church is saying, hey, if this is who God has created, like, let's allow you to flourish. My daughter's perspective, after watching some videos in the sociology class and things, she believes that number is rising because we're nurturing that community. And
it looks like it could be a social contagion, especially the trans issues with teenagers. I mean, they all get on Instagram, and it looks as though it's possible that so the argument is that it's safer to come out now, right? It's safer to talk about these things. We've allowed this conversation to finally at last enter the town square, so it can be debated publicly and people can talk about it. But there's the flip side of that, which also it looks like it could be a social contagion, in which, like, gender dysphoria, since the onset, so a sudden, it may not even really be a thing, but there's a guy you should look into named Jonathan Haidt. And for one of our future book clubs, I really want to recommend The Righteous Mind. His book's amazing. But he talks a lot about social contagion and how since the inception, or since like iPhones became prevalent, the amount of gender dysphoria, students or people saying, I don't know what gender I am anymore, or I don't know whether I'm a boy or a girl or something in between, like that number has just exponentially increased. And there's a strong correlation with, the amount of time people are spending online. So you have to at least discuss that. Um, but so yeah, your daughter's 100% right that it looks like nurture. It really looks like there's a big component of socialization involved in this, coming to such a, so many people getting coming out this way.
So, we talk about like, what makes this is not going to land right at all. Bad timing for this example, but what makes a serial killer, right? Or what makes somebody excel? And their sense of belonging has psychologically proven to move people in one direction or another. And so there is also this belief that when someone, especially in these formative years, doesn't feel like they belong, there is this community that's saying, hey, we don't all belong, and now we're coming together. So kind of join us and we'll give you a home. And so there's a belief that these children who are lost out there are just looking for an accepting place to belong. And sometimes it may or may not, I'm pretty like heterosexual, but if I didn't belong, I just made that comment about women, right? If I didn't feel like I belonged, could that be a place that I could?
Oh,
I don't know.
it's incredibly painful. I mean, trans kids are killing themselves at alarming rates. Kids that identify as trans are committing suicide. We want to be very careful. You were right that it wasn't going to land well, because the juxtaposition of this particular topic with anything negative is going to get you in trouble. So, and I know you don't think, that. No, I know you don't think that. I'm not making excuses for you. I know for a fact that we're just trying to think this through out loud, and you're not putting serial killers and trans issues
Never.
not in
But
the
I'm
same.
talking about the importance of that sense of belonging to an
Of
individual,
course.
and how it can bring you down different paths.
I think the question that we began with was, do we want this in our schools at this particular age? What do we think about what Florida is doing? Correct?
Thanks for keeping us on track there, Allie.
Yeah.
Well,
let me talk about one of the externalities of this. So one of the things that's going to come out of this, is potentially could come out of this. So the activist teachers that want to talk to your kids about sex, they do exist. They're there. And there's, how I know is there's dozens of TikTok videos, and especially TikTok for some reason, but there's dozens of videos of these people talking about, well, I'm really upset about this because I can't talk about my, my spouse or my partner or whatever. But what's going to come out of it is they're going to say, well, if we can't talk about gender, then we're going to remove all references to gender from the conversation. So look at what Disney is doing now. Disney happens to be in Florida. There's not going to be any more men's and women's rooms. There's not going to be any more Mr., Mrs. There's not going to be any more gendered language. So they're going to remove the normal, what we would call normal binary pronouns and things. They're going to assault it in that direction. So that's where the pushback is going to come. And they're not wrong, because if the bill passes, then you're essentially saying you can't discuss gender or sexuality with children, then you can't discuss the binary gender or heterosexual sexuality with them either.
Andy, at school, you can't talk about gender at school. I do not want, and trust me, I am so supportive of this community. I have friends and family that are really, really dear to me that are like kind of struggle with some of the biases in the world every day. I am so supportive of this, but I don't want any teacher talking to my 8-year-old about sex and gender. That's my job as a parent. So there's this piece of me that's like, well, get the bill. Shut the heck up. Teach them how to read. Teach them how to do math. But there's this other part, I think the bill needs some finesse, because we have to be able to just get that dumb little smirk off your face, Angela. Go ahead, Allie. What were you going to say?
No, I guess I hear you, because part of me at age 8 would love to teach my child myself and make sure that it's accurate. Are these teachers equipped to do so? Are the guidance counselors equipped to do so? So it would be great if all parents were like you, Colleen, or perhaps like me and Andy, to explain that to our child. But then there's these kids in school who aren't getting anything at all and need something from the teachers. Age 8, not so sure. I don't know. Maybe children have developed who they are at that point already, and that's why they're saying we need to do it at age 8. So again, I could see both sides, but ultimately, I would prefer to tell my child as well.
You know, it's interesting. I don't have this little friend who in kindergarten, you just like the first day I met him, you knew that, you know,
You just know.
gay.
Yep.
You just know he was gay. These kids, they didn't know. Like the kindergarten through third grade, they were like, they had no idea. He had no idea. Like it was like he was just playing with who he wanted to play with. It was just beautiful.
Yeah.
And then, you know, fourth and fifth grade comes and they talk about sex education. And, you know, it was not even like it wasn't a conversation with these kids, but like I'm like, okay, I guess before they're 8 years old, are they even thinking sexually? Just let them be children and play in
Exactly.
the playground.
No,
But
it's funny
that,
you think I'm disagreeing with you, Colleen, because I'm not. I don't think that it has any place in the classroom, but I'm just telling you where the direction is, where it's going to go. So they're going to what happens when they say, well, we can't use this textbook or we can't read Dr. Seuss because it refers to he and she. And you think I'm being ridiculous. I'm not. That's where this goes.
but when okay, so
I hope not. I hope you're wrong.
my gay lesbian friends, you know, LGBT, I watch RuPaul Drag Race. I love them, you know, and they all talk about they wish there was a narrative when they were younger, even at age 8, to validate how they felt. So that's why I say again, I can see both sides, but I can also see, Andy, the control at play here, you know, getting rid of the he, she. It's such a fine line, all of it.
The discussion, like, so again, like I said, I'm a on Twitter, and that's where these debates are happening. Okay, I know it sounds stupid, but it's true. This is where all this crap is getting kicked around. I'm sure in other forums too, but it's really an argument over control of the language, how we use language, and if you can control the language, then you can control a lot of things, right? It's an argument about objective reality. Do we agree? Can we agree as a culture? Like, is there enough consensus within the culture that male and female are a thing, and that especially you hear this argument about biological sex being a spectrum? Well, what about the intersex people you hear? What about the clownfish? I know this is probably not landing with you guys because you have not been swimming in these waters, but this is the debate now in academia, and it's spilling out as these kids are graduating. It's spilling out into the culture in general. The conversation is shifting towards an all-out assault on norms, which is, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm not judging it. I'm just saying what it is. The next thing that will happen is they will stop. And Disney's already announced. You go read the article about what Disney's doing. They're already doing it. So it's very real, and it's very disappointing, and it's really I don't know what to do about it, because if you believe in free speech, you know, and you don't want government regulating what you can and can't say, it really opens a can of worms, this debate. It really does. And you can't be a free speech absolutist.
Right.
But it's more complex than I've been able to get my head around. Let's put it that way.
That was good, guys.
Well, I guess you said it all. We could go everywhere with this conversation and nowhere with this conversation, but there's a lot of work.
There's so much going on, and if you guys haven't been paying attention to the you know, and not that you would be, I would hope you wouldn't be. Like, this kills me every day. I doom scroll and I read about this crap and the arguments that are being had about gender and language, and it's just this really weird space that we're in right now. And I don't think it has anything to do with average trans or gay kids or whatever. I don't think that's what's important here, is the welfare of those people. That doesn't seem to be what the debate is about. It seems to be about political activism.
But just for the record, the three of us believe that nothing is more important than the welfare of these children. It's our number one priority.
I believe the children are our future.
Teach them well and let them lead the way. On
Truer
that
words
note,
have never been said.
How do we, like, I think I spent a lot of time trying to say, okay, here we have this problem, we have this challenge, like, how do we find this place of real equality? And the real challenge, like I'm racked with every day, is how do we fix it? And I don't know that we are even close to an answer.
I don't think we're going to be able to do it. Just as a teaser.
Hey, if you want to weigh in on this conversation, please visit our Facebook group. And you can say that here, and it's a Facebook group, and there's some dialogue happening out there. So we hope you join us and enjoy that conversation with us and weigh in. We postponed our book club to next week. We're going to be talking about The Shack, and is it the next stage of the gospel or a psychedelic trip?
It's satanic.
It is not, Andy.
Wait. So
I will argue the fundamentalist Christian position on this book then, Allie.
All right. I can't wait.
Until next week, please subscribe. You can anywhere where you listen to podcasts. Thank you for joining us. That you can say that here.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. Please remember to smite the like and subscribe buttons. This is the end.